Good morning and welcome to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWEG. We are so glad that you've joined us, and whether you're watching the recording or if you're watching it with us live, welcome today. I just wanted to remind people that our registration for our annual spring conference has opened, and we are currently offering an early bird discount of $10 off the regular registration price for in-person to right now until February 2nd. So if you are thinking about joining us in person on March 23rd at Utah Valley University, we gladly would love to have you there. I can put a link to the registration in the discussion group, and I'll put a link in the chat after we get started. I'm so happy to welcome Megan Woods, our director of our nonpartisan route here at MWEG, back to the Grow. She is going to be talking about principled voting and primaries, and why is that important, and how does that apply to us? We often start speaking about principled voting as it gets closer to general election, but now we're hearing about all of these caucuses and primaries happening that have started around the country, and why would that be important to us as MWEG members? So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Megan.
Hi, thanks, Rachel. So like she said, I'm the director of nonpartisan, and it's easier for me to talk about general elections, which are not really partisan as much as primaries. You have to choose a party to vote with. So it's a little different, but we can remain true to like our nonpartisan principles by holding on to our principles tightly and not replacing that with just a party loyalty. So the first thing that we all need to do, no matter where you live, is to check your voter registration and make sure everything's up to date, and find out how primaries work in your state and in your area. Your state website should have all of the information you need to find there, and to find the dates, any information of what you need to do to be prepared to participate in your primaries. And primaries are different. Every state does them a little differently. And so you need to find out how it works in your state. And if you are part of a state chapter of MWEG, we can help you figure that out for your area. There are some of the different ways primaries work. Some have open elections where you do not have to be formally affiliated with a party in order to vote in that party's primary. Some have closed elections where you do need to be affiliated. You need to officially register as a Republican or as a Democrat in order to participate. And in Utah, there's a date you needed, and it's passed. If you want to participate in the primary, you need to be registered with your party by January 8th, I think. So if no matter where you are, just find out what that date is and make sure that you're ready. There are semi-closed primaries where unaffiliated voters can vote in the primary election of whatever party, but the thing is, you just can't vote in both parties. You can't, you just have to choose one, even if you're unaffiliated. There's some states that do what is a top two election, where all candidates are listed on the same ballot, and then the two that get the most votes then go on to the general election, regardless of which party they're in. And then some states hold a caucus, which is different than a private secret ballot altogether. So find out what your state does, and make sure your registration is up to date and that you're prepared to vote. Now, some systems work better than others. And so what we're doing in some states is working within the system to change the system over time, to update and hopefully find the best way to choose the very best candidates, so that when we get to the general election, we have the best options available. In the meantime, while we're working within those systems, we want to make sure that part of being a principled citizen is to have trust in the election system, to have faith in those elections. Clear back in 2020, President Oaks spoke in General Conference, and he said, we will accept the results of the election and not participate in violence that was planned. It's what he said back then, and that's still the case. We'll accept results even if we don't like them. And we will work within the system to improve. We don't give up just because our favorite guy didn't win, right? We work within the system to always approve and advocate for better systems and for ethical government. So the next thing I want to talk about is why primaries even matter. Primaries tend to have a really low voter turnout. Recently, Iowa held their primary. Less than 15% of registered Republicans voted in that primary. And so that is a very small number. And the more we can increase the number of people who vote in primaries, the more the government becomes representative of the people. So, but with such a few number of people voting, your vote really has more weight. It has a lot of meaning. And this really determines who's on the ballot for the general election. So if you have a favorite candidate during the primary season, you can't vote for them in the general election unless they win the primaries. And so you need to, we all need to be involved in this early stage. And then another thing that's really important to remember this year, especially, is that primaries are often about more than just the president of the United States. We are voting for senators or congresspeople and a lot of local elections. Where I live, there is often not a Democrat on the general election for our local, very local things like county commissioner or mayor. And so it's in the primary elections that those that we are making the decisions for the best candidates. And so that's where it, depending on where you live and how competitive a place it is, the primaries can hold a lot of weight and a lot of importance. I think a lot about King Mosiah when he chose to change the government of the people because none of his sons wanted the throne. And the way he approached this new government, the way he taught us people about it, he instructed them to do your business by the voice of the people. And I like that phrase. It reminds me a lot of Abraham Lincoln, who said that we have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So what we want to remember, whether primaries or general elections, or even just advocating in general, that we are the people. And so we are the government. This is our government, and we are a part of it. King Mosiah, he talked about his purpose for wanting to get rid of a king and have government done by the voice of the people. And he said it was because he wanted there to no more be inequality in the land. He wanted there to be a land of liberty, that every person could enjoy their rights and privileges alike. And I love that idea, just that the inequality is less when our votes are, when we are voting, when we're participating. And we're working on voting rights. That's one of our things we always advocate for. But in the meantime, we have that right, and our vote is equal once we cast it. And so the people, King Mosiah's people were, it says they became exceedingly anxious that every man should have an equal chance throughout all the land. And this is what our votings get for us, or our participation in voting gives us an equal chance. And it is a way to overcome inequality. And again, when they cast in their voices, I like that it said they cast in their voices and not cast in their votes. They were exceedingly rejoiced because of the liberty that was granted unto them. And that's, a perspective we can have when we're participating in something that's kind of bogs us down. It can be very burdensome. It can be very discouraging. But we can remember this perspective that the Nephites had, that they were just rejoicing because of the liberty that was given unto them. So when we get that little sticker that says, I voted, and that's something that we can be excited about, that we are exercising our freedom and casting our vote. I like to vote. I do not enjoy a caucus meeting. And that's the way we do primaries where I live. We have caucuses. And a couple of years ago during, it was 2022, I was asking my teenage son if he'd babysit my youngest daughter so I could go to the caucus meeting. I told him I'm just dreading it. And he said, well, then why are you going? And I said, well, I want to be a good citizen. And he said, well, Mom, why don't you just pick up a piece of litter, call yourself a good citizen and be done with it? And I, I thought it was really funny, but I want to participate because I do rejoice in the liberty I've been given. I also think of abdicating. Like, we are all, like, in America, we're fascinated with royalty, even though we don't have royalty. And when Prince Harry stepped away from his royal duties, so it's huge, like, a lot of people were really fascinated that he would make that choice. Also, in the last couple of years, the Crown Princess of Japan also chose to give up the throne for someone she wanted to marry. And then just very recently, the Queen of Denmark abdicated the throne for her son will become king. So we're all very fascinated with this idea of giving up the throne. If we turn that and remember that we have this government by the people, and we are the people, we want to remember that we don't want to abdicate our right to participate in our government. We want to be a part of it, participate in primaries, participate in caucuses, even when they're not a lot of fun, because that is our way to have our vote matter and to have our voice matter. So when we were talking about principled voting and how that works in a primary, I like what Sharon McMahon will often say, your vote is yours to do with it what you want. And a lot of people have their own principles of how they choose how to participate in primaries. And I'm going to review some of those, and these are things you make your own decisions about, but the easiest one would be to align and affiliate with a party that you feel best represents your values and participate in that primary or in that party. If you have an open primary, you can vote in whichever primary election that you feel matters the most for getting the best candidates for the general election. Voting for a less extreme candidate is a lot of people's goals. Some people absolutely refuse to align with a party. They cannot, in good conscience, be a part of that. And that is a principled choice that you might choose to make. Some people align with a party or affiliate with a party simply so that they can be allowed to vote in primaries. And I know a lot of people do this. Some people find this unprincipled. But if you do this so that you can have your voice matter, so that you can participate, and also so that you can have the best candidates showing up for the general election, this is a very principled choice that is respectable. And I know a lot of MWEG members will go and volunteer as a delegate from their caucus meeting so they can go to the convention and they do that specifically to be moderate influences. Our parties can be very extreme when we leave them alone. And so if we can pull in more moderate principled voters into these primary system, then we can end up with better candidates in the general election. So when you think about how you want to use your vote, use it strategically. Use it in a principled way, and use it in a way that you can make the most impact where you live. And that's going to be different for all of us. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is how do you choose who to vote for? I'm going to share my screen. These are from our series about principled voting from 2022. You can find the principled voting or principled voter, these memes and other things we've written about it on our website. You can also find these memes in highlights on our Instagram page. So we want to talk about what it means to be a principled voter, and you can do this in the primaries and also in general and in local elections. It's about more than just voting for a president. We always want to vote with the golden rule in mind, to do unto others as we would have them do unto us, to think about other people. And ask yourself the question, will my vote harm others or leave them behind? And these are things to consider. Which issues are most important to you? We're all going to answer that differently. Are there some issues you don't prioritize? Why not? So when you consider which ones you don't prioritize that other people do, you can consider if maybe you should prioritize those a little more. What issues do you consider critical for our nation to address right now? When President Oakes has talked in conference about voting, he reminds us that this might change. What is most important to us might change from election to election. And so we need to be aware of what's happening right now so we can vote for what's most important right now. Do you try to understand the complexities of an issue and why might good, well-informed people feel differently than you do? I can't overemphasize how important this is. If we don't understand how somebody who is also principled, who also has a good character, who's also intelligent and wants what's best, if we can't understand why they approach something very differently than us, I don't think we really understand the issue that we're supporting. We want to dive in and understand the complexities and also understand who it matters to. And this is where the golden rule can come in really handy as well. If there's people who support something that we really haven't thought about before, we can try to understand why and understand, maybe we can use a little more compassion in our vote. As we head into the election season, we reflect on these questions and the issues impacting your community and nation, and focus always on being a principled voter with the golden rule as part of this. Susan Madsen said, making sure you are registered to vote and informed on the issues may be the most patriotic thing you could ever do. This is much more important than waving a flag. We need to participate as much as we can. So the next part of our Principled Voter series, we go through several key things that we can be thinking about. And the one I want to focus on the most today is about voting. And so one thing we need to ask is, will my candidate protect the votes of all citizens? We want to promote people or elect people who respect the process, respect voting. A principled voter makes sure no one gets left behind. So we want to support leaders who increase access to voting and strengthen our faith in elections and listen to voters. So anybody who, our challenges to our elections going through the court system, those are not new, and those are within legal rights of people who feel there may have been a problem. But we really want people who will concede, who will be willing to accept the outcome of all elections. This increases democracy, really, because if we don't have faith in our elections, we won't be voting, we won't be participating. Voter access and fair representation allows citizens to feel ownership of our democracy. When we're talking about a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, that's us. But if we can't access the vote, equally, then we lose ownership and we lose the care, and everything feels out of our control. So why does it matter? When more citizens vote, extreme positions have less pull. I think we all feel the need to have less extremism in government. When elections are free and fair, effort and persuasion can make change happen peacefully. And voting sends clear signals about our common priorities. Our goal, of course, is to build a beloved community, and we're golden rule voters. So like we said at the beginning, we're going to ask if our vote will harm others or leave them behind. And we want to use our vote to protect all people and create a better future. So again, some advice: you choose leaders who will protect everyone's vote. And there's some other things you can do. You can volunteer as a poll worker or work with a campaign, especially early in the primary election season. That's a great way or donating money. These are great ways to get your candidate a little farther along in the system. And we want to do whatever we can to support voting access for people who have more difficulty voting, especially hourly workers, elderly, sick and disabled, and citizens living overseas, including, our missionaries. A few more questions. First, the most basic question is, do I vote? Do I participate in the primary elections? And do I defend the right of every citizen to vote? And then have I supported leaders who try to gain power by limiting voter access? And this is really key, especially in the primaries. We want vote, well, in all elections, we want to make sure we support leaders who gain power through the voice of the people, not through limiting the voice of the people. I'm just going to go over a couple of other topics that are in our Principled Voter series without going through all the slides of them. So this one is about unity. Will my candidates foster unity or division? Democracies rely on cooperation and shared vision in order to function effectively. So we really want somebody, in the primaries, we get this, our people running, they want to appear strong. They want to tell us how they're going to be better at squashing down the opposing party. I don't know a better word. I use squashing. But in reality, government works best when we have people who are willing to compromise, to moderate, to work with bipartisan and coalitions to try to create unity, even among differences. The next thing is about equality. Are my candidates committed to our founding principle of equality? People matter. We all deserve to be treated with respect, have opportunities to thrive, and enjoy equal protection under the law. We want to make sure we're electing people who respect the fact that people matter. The next one is about ethics and corruption. Do my candidates demonstrate principles of ethical leadership? There are in our on our website, it said, know your vote, grow your vote. That's what I search when I go to MWEG's website to find these materials. There is a series of questions you can ask to look at what it means to be an ethical leader. Remember that our government must work for all of us, not just the wealthy and connected, and also not just the people who are part of the winning party's political party. So we need to expect citizens and elected officials to obey the law and to have respect across the board for others. Environmental stewardship. How do my candidates advocate for our environment? Environmental issues are really far-reaching, and they're very local, a lot of them. I live at it's a tourist location by a lake, and I'm on the Planning Commission. The decisions we make at this very local, very, very small, they affect a big thing, because the lake, we want to preserve it for future generations. And so we want to have growth that can preserve that lake, not just for our tourist industry, but also for our agriculture and just for the beauty of it. And so we need to remember that at all levels of government, that the environmental issues matter. The next one is that international cooperation. Will my candidates promote international cooperation? National acts can reverberate far beyond borders in both positive and negative ways. So we want to remember our interconnectedness and our shared humanity. Things we do as Americans affect whether or not people become refugees, for example. And then we need to promote things that are best for all the world that can end up being, that's how we become stronger as people and live more peacefully where we are. Next one is to relieve human suffering. And we want to think about how our candidates respond to human suffering and what ideas they have for relieving it. Our national reaction to human suffering reflects our moral state. And indifference to human suffering corrupts our culture, and it really does lasting harm. It affects the way our children view each other and outsiders, and also people within their own communities. Political violence. This is unfortunately a new subject we've had to bring up 2 years ago when we updated these. Do my candidates demonstrate civility and promote peace when speaking about political opposition? Healthy democracies champion a variety of political values and ideals. So violent responses to differences of opinion endanger the safety and stability of our communities. And we can tell by the way a candidate speaks and what they promote, whether this is something that's important to them. But the peaceful transfer of power at all levels of government is one of the values that makes America a really, really unique and really promotes democracy and has value for all of us. This one is about rights and responsibilities. How do my candidates balance the tension between rights and responsibilities? Sometimes, especially at my caucus meetings, we focus more on rights. And we want to remember that we have a responsibility to each other. Democracies must manage competition over resources, values, rights, and liberties. No liberty is absolute, right? So we need to find a balance so that our whole community can thrive with the golden rule in mind. Balancing these interests while protecting civil liberties is a challenge, for sure, but it is vital that we have that balance. Okay, so these are some questions for you to consider at this time when you're approaching your primaries. What steps will I take to become a principled voter? So what is at stake? Hyperpartisanship is damaging the civic fabric of our nation. Disagreements over candidates and issues cause anger and hatred, affect personal relationships, and divide our country. When we choose to be principled voters, we can help create a more peaceful and unified nation, and we can make a difference. Why does this matter? In the United States, the source of the government power is the people. That's what we've been talking about. Your vote is vital, and it can be the means to peaceful change. Diversity of thought, lived experience, and ideas is a strength in a democracy. So when we encounter new ideas, it allows us to listen, think, consider, learn, and act. Our government functions best when we collaborate and compromise, moderate, and unify. Power comes when you exercise your influence peacefully and civilly. Your vote matters. And your vote is one way we can hope to begin to conquer the partisan divide. We've talked about this whole time. Hold your principles firmly, but your political affiliation lightly. Value the perspectives of those who disagree with you. Choose fact-based and balanced news sources, and use your voice to share your principles. There are so many ways to use your voice, and voting is a really vital one of those, but also you can share online, you can write letters to the editor, op-eds, you can speak up at your caucus meeting if that's the way your state holds primaries. So even in primary elections, take time to learn about issues, including arguments for opposing policy positions, and respect the competence and the wisdom of experts. Not all opinions are of equal value. And so pay attention to whose opinion you're putting your trust in. Acknowledge that most policy solutions are complex. They'll require a compromise. If you can fit your political opinion on a bumper sticker or in a meme, you don't understand the issue, right? And so we need to acknowledge that and vote for people who also acknowledge that policy solutions are really complex. Prioritize what matters most in the current climate while acknowledging our nation's diverse needs. We can't have everything all at once. We have to vote for what matters this year and what matters at this time. So we want to build a beloved community by being a golden rule voters. Constitution is for everybody. It guarantees rights and protection for everybody. So we want to always think about the people in our nation who are being harmed or left behind and use our vote in a way to change that and vote to do the most good and the least harm. The government is powerful and its full force can really hurt people or really help them. So we want to really help as many people as we can. These are questions we started out with or similar ones. How can I become a more principled voter? what issues am I drawn to advocate for? And what do I want my country to be? We want to have a bigger perspective than just what we want to be looking to the future, have a big perspective and think about what we want the country to be. That is all I have, but we have time for if anybody has any questions or comments. I think we could do that, right, Rachel?
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions to share? Megan, I appreciate that you are reminding our members to A, register, but B, to look into what their state's rules are. I think a lot of people don't understand that it's state by state, whether you're, whatever you're registered as, however you're registered as, and what abilities you have to vote in the primaries. I know that in my state, you can only vote in your party that you're registered for the primaries. So, effectively, you'd have to know what those rules are because it's different, and when, what the dates are because it's different. It's not the same as the generals where everybody votes on the same day. It's different. So I'm glad that you mentioned and reminded us about Know Your Vote, Grow Your Vote, and I'll put a link to that in the Facebook discussion group because that has a lot of good information to remind people like, oh yeah, I need to start preparing now so that I'm ready when it's my turn, right?
Absolutely. And I wanted to also point out that within one state, the parties might have different rules for primaries. It used to be, I'm not sure right now, but 4 years ago, you could, in Utah, you had to be registered Republican to vote in the Republican primary, but you didn't have to be registered Democrat. In fact, you could even be registered Republican and vote in the Democrat primary. So your parties have different rules, not just states have different rules.
So there's a question in the chat. It says, am I throwing away my vote if I write in a candidate because the party nominees do not match my principles?
So that is a really personal question, quite frankly. We talked about how you use your vote strategically according to the principles you have. And that can sometimes send a message that you do not agree with the options you have. And that's a decision you have to make. I've voted third party before because I didn't like the major candidate parties or major party candidates. And I did not feel like I was throwing away my vote because I felt like I could look at myself in the mirror the next morning and feel okay if that person won. So that, people have different views on that.
And it in the chat, it says, it depends on how you're looking at it. Some states, writing candidates have to register. If you're in one of those states, that vote won't be counted if that person hasn't registered. It's important to know the rules in your state. So it goes back to knowing, like I said, to go and see what the rules in your state are, especially around primaries and the election rules, because it differs across so many. And we had one comment in the chat talking about open primaries. They're working in Idaho for open primaries. To do that, I know that we have some states that are working for ranked choice voting. And so you had talked a little bit about that it would be those with the most votes, regardless of which party that they're in, they would move on based on just how many votes they got.
Yeah, so that can make a lot of sense, especially if you are in a state where there's a dominant party. I was reading this morning about an election for a new senator in California, and they have that kind of primary system where they have the top candidates, and they'll have the two who get the most votes in the general election. And that part of California has a lot of Democrats. And so they will probably end up with 2 Democrats on the general election, but that still gives you a choice between hopefully the 2 best. So that, and the person, was that Amanda? Yeah, we're working hard on open primaries in Idaho. That's one of MWEG's advocacy areas in Idaho. And so that's when I was referring to working within the system to make the system a little better.
Yeah, it's one of those things, again, it's about knowing, about being aware and and learning, which is something that MY wants to help you with. So if anybody has questions, like how do I find this out? Where would I know? I will try to find the links to that, but you can always email us and ask us, and we can try to help you as you're preparing for your vote. But first and foremost, as Megan started off, make sure you're registered, make sure you're aware of when your elections are, especially your primaries, or if you have any special elections in your area, just go in prepared, right? I think that's the key, whether it's the primaries or the general, be prepared, go in there as a prepared principled voter. I mean,
For
because we
sure.
can have those principles, but if we don't know what, if we haven't kind of studied out the issues or we haven't decided what's the most important to us, then it makes it a little trickier to do what's best for what we intend, but maybe we're going in blind. So anyway, thank you to everybody that joined us today. We are so glad that you came. This recording will be put onto our YouTube Grow playlist, so you're welcome to share that. I'll put it in MY Central, so it will be there with those recordings, and you can share it and watch it later. So thanks again, Megan, for being here. Thanks for everybody else for being here, and we'll see you guys. Oh, did you have something else?
No, I was.
Oh,
Rachel.
the same thing. Anyway, and next week we will be back. I think that we will have a message from our comms team as we are preparing for the new MWAC app. So that will be really exciting. So tune in next week if you want to know more about that. And we will see you all next time. Have a good day.